Я проснулся и понял, что мне очень хочется умереть.
Рушится все.
Вот не хочу ничего, хочу сдохнуть.
Да блин, слава богу, живет.
Чё? Там внутри такой океан боли.
Это жутко все время ждать, что твой ребенок может погибнуть.
Я никогда бы не рассказал эту историю, если бы она касалась только меня и моего сына. Но людей, которые испытывают сильные эмоции и не могут с ними справиться, и наносят себе самоповреждения, слишком много. Они везде.
The 20th century was the era of revolution, the Great Depression and world wars. The 21st is the century of mental illness. Those aren't my words, that's what therapists and psychiatrists tell us. The only question is, should we accept it as a fact? Yes or no?
Live from the world headquarters of RT America in our nation's capital, this is the news with Rick Sanchez.
Hi, everybody. I'm Rick Sanchez, and we want to welcome those of you who are watching us from all over the world, including especially those of you who are watching us using your phones, using new technology, as they like to say, with the portable TV app. So the President of the United States is still contesting the call by the Associated Press and the television networks that have declared Joe Biden the winner of the election by virtue of his 290 electoral votes. We are going to drill down on the Herculean task ahead for the president to try and make this happen. Something, by the way, that he has every right to do. Nonetheless, there's a conflict in America, and we're going to take you through it. But I want to begin, I want to begin with this. Watch this. Those are angry mobs in the streets of Armenia were the results of a peace deal with Azerbaijan. Well, look, as you can see in some of these pictures, they are just not sitting well with many Armenians, as you see right there on the street. So I want to give you a little better sense of what's going on in this part of the world, which seems obviously very remote to many of us. So let me break this down for you. As you look at it, this is Azerbaijan and there's Armenia, right? This is the capital, Baku, of Azerbaijan. And then I'm going to take you to the capital of Yerevan, which is the capital of Armenia, in just a little bit. But just to give you a better understanding of actually what happens in this region and how we got to where we are, I think it's illustrative to be able to visualize this. So you see where Russia is, right? There's the border with Russia. There's the border with Georgia. And this right here, you know that place we keep talking about, that disputed area where there's always so much frustration? That's it right there. That's Nagorno-Karabakh right there in this area. Now, the real heat that you've been seeing, that has been happening in the last couple of days that we have been covering for you, the place where you've seen all those videos that came into our newscast late last night, are right there. That's Yerevan. That's the capital of Armenia. That's where opposition forces stormed the parliament yesterday. Here's the pictures. Take a look. I mean, they were there, well, they felt betrayed by their government. And watch this. Look at this video. These are people literally, could you imagine? That would be like Americans storming Capitol Hill and, getting into the Senate or the House of Representatives. They are there because they believe their government capitulated by agreeing to a peace deal with Azerbaijan. Now, the situation actually escalated. Look at these pictures. You see this? The Speaker of Armenia's parliament somehow found himself in this melee just outside the parliament building, where he was dragged from his car and beaten on the street. By the way, Armenia's Prime Minister, Nikol Pashinyan, he's said to be in a secure location right now, possibly to avoid the fate that befell the Speaker of the Parliament. Meanwhile, some 2,000 Russian peacekeeping troops are now making their way into the region to try and make this peace deal that has been negotiated by all three sides somehow stick. It's a lot going on. This is the News with Rick Sanchez, where we present all sides, cover the news, both in your backyard and across the globe, because our world is too connected to ignore, and because we really believe It's time to do news again. Okay, here's the questions that we think you'll be asking tomorrow. So, why are Armenians reacting violently to a peace deal? Violently to a peace deal. Weird, right? President Trump digging in his heels. Is he justified? And how do supporters for both sides make their cases? Okay, before we do anything else, I want to get to some of the truly dramatic scenes that we have been watching with you playing out over the past 24 hours or so, especially in the Yerevan, the capital of Armenia. Here now, to help put it all together, RT correspondent Alex Mihailovich with the play-by-play.
It was a brutal 6 weeks of fighting between Armenia and Azerbaijan. But finally, the two sides have laid down their arms. Although Armenia's Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan has called the Russian brokered deal incredibly painful both for me and for our people, Russian President Vladimir Putin is hopeful that the agreement could lead to a lasting peace.
The situation in Nagorno-Karabakh is a big tragedy, but with great pleasure, I want to point out the compromise and agreement of ending the massacre. I hope that all steps we made lately will lead to establishing long-term peace for the benefit of Armenian and Azerbaijani citizens.
Internationally, Nagorno-Karabakh is recognized as an enclave that exists within the borders of Azerbaijan, even though the region has been run by ethnic Armenians since 1994. A Russian-brokered truce between the two sides, which was signed in the early 1990s, was violated on multiple occasions. This is the first time that Armenia and Azerbaijan have consented to such a deal. The new agreement, which took effect earlier today, allows Azerbaijan to maintain parts of Nagorno-Karabakh that it has taken during the recent conflict. Armenia has agreed to withdraw from several other areas in the enclave over the next few weeks. In addition, Russia has begun to send peacekeepers to the region. The force of nearly 2,000 will guard the Lachin corridor, which links the Karabakh capital, Stepanakert, to Armenia. Here's Azeri President Ilham Aliyev.
The peacekeeping contingent of the Russian Federation will stay there for 5 years, with an automatic extension for later 5-year periods if none of the parties declares its wish to terminate this paragraph 6 months before the end of the 5-year period.
While many in Azerbaijan are viewing the agreement as a victory for their nation, the scene in Armenia is quite different. In Armenia last night, protesters and opposition leaders stormed the country's parliament, furious over what they deem as capitulation. Many Armenians wanted to continue the fight, but the nation's prime minister says a peace deal was the only choice.
I want to say that this decision was made on the basis of examination of the wartime posture, estimation and analysis of people who understand the situation more than anyone else.
According to the Armenian leader in Nagorno-Karabakh, the deal was unavoidable. Armenian forces had lost Karabakh's second biggest town, which has a great historic and emotional importance, and Azerbaijani forces were on their way to take the region's main city, Stepanakert. Ultimately, the threat that ethnic Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh would have been pushed out of the region altogether became a growing possibility. While Azeris celebrate, the reality of the conflict seems to be sinking in for many Armenians. Today, that country's capital, Yerevan, remained relatively calm as the government of the nation contemplates how to proceed, both internally and internationally. For RT, I'm Alex Mihailovich.
Hey, let's bring in former member of the UK Parliament, George Galloway, to talk about this. You know, George, as a journalist, I've always tried to be very careful not to show a puddle and then try to explain it as a flood. So just because there are people who seem to be acting crazy there in the capital does not necessarily mean that the entire populace feels that way. Still, with that said, help us understand why a peace treaty is announced and the people turn violent. Apparently, we're having some problems with George. George, I know you can't hear me, but I'm going to bring you back in. Hey, George, we lost you at the beginning, so if you would be good enough to start over, everything will be copacetic. Go ahead, George.
Some people are always ready to fight
Some people are always ready to fight to the last drop of other people's blood, Rick. And the people who were doing the fighting in Nagorno-Karabakh were losing the war. They lost the second biggest city, and within a matter of days, they might well have lost the biggest city. There might have been no Armenian left in Nagorno-Karabakh if the Russian government had not brokered this deal. So it's force majeure, I'm afraid. You can understand the grief, the historical attachment of Armenians to this part of territory, but it is, after all, in Azerbaijan. There's no getting away from that. The whole territory is Azeri territory, and the only reason the Azeri government was not in control of it was because of previous wars, because of previous armed conflicts, which the Armenians had won. Well, the tables have turned. Azerbaijan is now backed by powerful people, particularly the new Ottoman Empire of President Erdogan in Turkey. They were deploying very heavy weaponry. They were deploying mercenaries from Syria in significant numbers. And there was a real danger that the whole enclave would be overrun with God knows what kind of ethnic cleansing to follow. So the Russians have stepped in. They've brokered this deal, the best deal possible in the circumstances, and they will now keep the peace along that corridor. But the area might now become much less attractive for Armenians to live in, and they may, many of them, never go back to it.
That's my concern, though. What happens now in Armenia? I know we're only down to about 45 seconds, but do you believe this is just people letting off steam, or do you believe this can escalate into civil war, where they remove the prime minister? See what they did yesterday to the Speaker of Parliament, George.
I don't think so, Rick, because the majority of the people in Armenia can recognize the facts that are in front of them, the nose on their face, that they did not win the war. They were losing the war. And you can't hold on to disputed territory when you're losing the war. So I think there'll be a lot of hurt feelings, a lot of tears shed, no doubt, and a lot of blood has been lost. This has been a horrific war, Rick. Thousands of people have lost their lives in just a few weeks. But I think they'll have to come to terms with it, I'm afraid.
All right, George Galloway, as usual, giving us a better understanding of a very difficult conflict in that part of the world. All right, this is the news with Rick Sanchez. You're watching our special coverage. And when we come back, our breakout panel on the election, different perspectives on where we are, and maybe more importantly, where in the hell we may be going. Stay right there. We'll be right back.
I like it when the host asks a question to the guests and then actually listens to the guest's answer and then reacts to that answer. Hey folks, Dennis Miller here. I've got a new show.
I'm Larry King. Questioning, listening, learning. You know, I've always said I never learned anything when I was talking. It's important to listen. Question more.
I've seen the horrors that arise when money and evil combine. Corporate criminals who trash countless lives to add just one more dollar to their billions. They threaten, they bribe, they'll do anything to keep their crimes in the dark. But the people they've hurt are demanding justice. Their stories need to be told on America's Lawyer.
Listen, stop letting online algorithms dictate what you get to watch. Go to portable.tv/download to get killer television. It's completely free. I'm talking award-winning comedy, awesome sports coverage, insights so fresh they'll taste like raspberries on a spring day, takes so hot they'll burn your face off. Thousands of videos, more added by the hour. Did I mention it's free? It's free. Go get it. portable TV.
I'm Holland Cook. I invite you to climb with me above the mainstream media mire, and from that higher vantage to glimpse the big picture. Question more.
And welcome back. Now to the latest on the U.S. election stalemate. President Trump is digging in his heels despite calls for a concession from Democrats. And President-elect Biden is putting together a transition team despite apparent resistance from the White House. What's a country to do? Let's begin with NRS correspondent Farron Franzak and the Biden camp.
This election is over. It's time to put aside the partisanship.
It's day 2 for the transition team, and a second day the Biden-Harris administration has met with its own coronavirus task force.
A mask is not a political statement.
Biden has just over 2 months till he's sworn in, but his team already looking at imposing mandatory mask mandates.
It doesn't matter your party, your point of view. We could save tens of thousands of lives if everyone would just wear a mask for the next few months.
Healthcare at the forefront of the transition team, as Tuesday marks the first day the Supreme Court will begin hearing arguments over the Affordable Care Act, something Biden helped accomplish as vice president under President Obama, something Republicans are looking to overturn.
Republican leaders must unequivocally condemn the president's rhetoric and work to ensure the peaceful transfer of power on January 20th.
Peaceful transition isn't likely, as the White House has instructed senior government leaders to block cooperation with Biden's transition team, escalating a standoff and prompting the Biden team to consider legal action. But the Biden-Harris administration isn't slowing down. Biden has begun taking calls from foreign leaders, weighing in on who to appoint to key cabinet positions. Some names floating around: former National Security Advisor Susan Rice as Secretary of State, Doug Jones for Attorney General, who just lost his Alabama senator's seat, Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti as the head of transportation, Meg Whitman, CEO of Quibi and former GOP candidate for California governor, as Commerce Secretary, and former South Bend, Indiana Mayor and Democratic presidential candidate Pete Buttigieg as head of the VA. Two names also floating around: Senator Bernie Sanders for Labor Secretary and Senator Elizabeth Warren for Treasury Secretary.
It is still to be determined which party will hold a majority in this chamber.
But with the special election in January for not one, but 2 Senate seats in Georgia, Democratic senators most likely will stay in the Senate as the party hopes to take back the majority.
But as history prepares to write the final few sentences on the Trump presidency, it will surely note how this president and his Republican allies here in Congress treated our democracy on his way out the door.
For the News with Rick Sanchez, I'm Farron Franzak.
Here now is Natasha Sweet with a look at the president and what his supporters are saying.
This election is not over. Far from it.
White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany signing more than 130 affidavits filed in Michigan alone as an example of voting irregularities. She also said there were reports of thousands of votes cast in Nevada from people who were not eligible. She says all the administration is asking for is truth and transparency.
There were 682,479 ballots counted in Philadelphia, in Allegheny County, that there were no poll watchers allowed to watch. It's the job of the media to ask the question, why?
If you are finding these irregularities, if you have an election worker being told to backdate ballots, that's a problem.
When the Associated Press called the 2020 election for Joe Biden over the week.
All right, we apologize. We had a little bit of a technical flaw with that. I want to bring in a panel because there's a lot to talk about here. Our legal experts, or I should say our political experts in this case. Lee Camp, host of Redacted Tonight. Amisha Cross, host of Watching the Hawks. Ned Ryan, CEO of American Majority, who, by the way, does a great Frank Sinatra, and Joy Villa, Republican strategist and author. Hey, Joy, you're kind of a newbie to our show, so I'm going to go ahead and start with you. Given that other presidents in the past have conceded at this point with a much smaller lead than what we're seeing that Mr. Biden has over Mr. Trump, why shouldn't he be counseled to concede?
Well, there's too much voter fraud allegations coming about. I mean, we see dead voters who've come up from the grave and miraculously voted for Joe Biden. I mean, I'm worried about the families because if someone had used my parents to illegally say that they voted for someone, whether it's the candidate I want or the candidate I don't want, I would be absolutely heartbroken. So this is a real issue. Our democracy, whether you're on the left or the right, our democracy is really at stake here.
Joy, let me bring in Amisha. Amisha, do you believe that, I guess, 46,000 dead people's votes were used in Pennsylvania? Because that's the lead that Biden has right now.
Absolutely not. I think that that's a last-ditch effort that conservatives are trying to use to basically sow seeds of dissent in an election process that was fairly won. It is what it is. I think that at this point we need President Trump to accept the results of this election. We need his acolytes to accept the results of this election. We need them to stop talking about electioneering, which there's absolutely no proof of. And I think that these lawsuits that we see thrown out on a regular basis go to show just how desperate this president is, because he has no leg to stand on. At this point, only thing he's doing is working to ensure that that peaceful transition of power will not happen.
I can see your point.
If you
believe,
believe that there's nothing going on, then why is it so dangerous to question it? This is for the left and the right. We have to have a fair election. If you are so sure your candidate won fair and square,
Joy,
why not let us ask questions?
But here's the point, Joy. Generally speaking, you have to first bring the evidence, and after you bring the evidence, the discussion can begin. I don't think it's fair for either. Hold on, Joy, for just a moment. I don't think it's fair for either party, whether it's the Democrats or the Republicans, to say, I have a feeling, or I believe, or we think, rather than saying, here are 100 or here are 5,000 people, here are their names and their social security numbers or whatever, and they will testify that they saw such a thing. But
that is being tallied.
But
that is happening right now. There is proof that is being brought to the Supreme Court justice right as we speak.
Guys,
there is proof.
Hold on just a moment. Where everyone's talking at once. Joy, I want to give you the opportunity because I question evidence. So you say there is proof? Share it with us.
I agree. And there is proof coming out. Rudy Giuliani has provided that proof to the Supreme Court. We have it being taken to the courts right now. So this proof will come out. We have voter fraud coming out in Georgia, in Michigan, even in New York, where there are thousands of dead voters who have been proven to show that they voted in this election.
But you didn't give us any evidence. But we do appreciate you pointing out that
I don't have the evidence, but there is evidence. And listen, whether you agree or disagree, we have to protect our right to question this. If this is fraud, it has to be shown.
Joy, nobody disagrees with that. But here's what I want to say. I want to separate. I think there's another conversation that we need to have here that has made me think about a few things. If it's true, Amisha, I'm going to challenge you. You say the president is delegitimizing Mr. Biden's win. Didn't Democrats delegitimize Mr. Trump's win for 4 years by saying that he really didn't win the election and that it was handed to him by the Russians?
Did Democrats call for recounts? Did Democrats challenge states? What we saw from the transition from Barack Obama to Donald Trump was a president who had a full transition team ready before day one of the Trump administration, whose wife shook the hands of the Trump family. We don't even see this coming from the administration we currently have. We saw a process that worked the way it's supposed to.
I get your point, but you didn't address my answer. I mean, if Mr. Trump is upset about if people are upset about what Mr. Trump seems to be doing, it could be argued that Mr. Trump has a right to be upset because the very same thing was done to him in multiples. Ned Ryan, come on in. Ned Ryan, let me hear from Ned.
Well, Rick, you want to talk numbers. Republicans are challenging 682,000 votes in Pennsylvania alone, in which the absentee ballot laws were completely disregarded. You actually have to prove that you would be absent to not vote in person. Of course, it turned out to be more of a series of suggestions in Pennsylvania. In Arizona, I'm going to tell you this. I think it's headed to a recount. You've got to be within 1/10 of a point. And at that point, it'll go to a recount. I would argue they're going to probably do the same thing that they're doing in Georgia, where the Trump campaign is saying we want to have a hand recount, an audit of every vote. And then, Rick, if you read some of these affidavits coming out of Michigan, I thought the one that really caught, there were two that caught my eye. One was the 40,000 unsecured ballots that were not in an envelope that showed up at the last minute, and shockingly, every last one of them went to the Democrats. The other one that stunned me is when they had tens of thousands of ballots showing up at 4 a.m., coming in the back door, being delivered by cars with out-of-state license plates. When there is a confluence, there's a confluence of statistical improbabilities. At some point, common sense kicks in and goes, hey, there's something going on here. But I will say this, Rick. Yeah. I think what's going to happen is they're going to take the case to the Supreme Court. It will go to it regarding Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. The question is, will they be able to, the Trump campaign, make their case that because of all the commingling of all these questionable ballots, will they be able to force a revote? It's a high barrier to actually get over, and I think it's at best a 50-50 proposition, so we're going to have to see, can they actually make that case to SCOTUS? I realize it's unusual, but heck, we're in 2020. Everything's on the table.
Lee Camp, to you, you've been listening to the conversation, arguments made on both sides. What do you say?
Yeah, I'm not a Trump guy nor a Biden guy, but the people thinking that Trump hasn't lost this are, it's kind of sad to see because, you know, there's two types of things. You can say anything you want. You can bring, oh, I saw a guy on Twitter, he had a video of a ballot on fire or whatever they say, you know. It's all ridiculous, but that's different than what's brought up in court. And so if you look at the court cases, really very little evidence has been brought forward in courts that have shown that these numbers could be changed by any large degree other than 10 ballots here and 10 ballots there. So, I mean, this thing is over. Biden's won. It's like I said, I'm not a fan of either of these war criminals, but if you really wanted to know how this election was altered, then you'd look at the millions of purged voters from the rolls, which are largely people of color. So really, Biden would have won larger if there'd been a legitimate vote.
Joy, let me get you back in to comment on my point, which is the fact that if nothing else, from a personal standpoint, I might be able to understand why it is that the president is so upset in his quest to, as Democrats say, delegitimize the Biden win. Do you understand that?
Well, it's absolutely, and it's a fair question. I mean, this president has fought hard for his presidency for 4 years. You know, the Democrats have said Russia, 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 and then when they tried to impeach him over it and they found nothing, it shows that they tried to to defame this president and the voters for years. And when we simply say, let's question this, and President Trump says, wait, what is happening in Michigan? What's happening in Pennsylvania? What's happening in Arizona?
Yeah,
why hasn't why haven't these things come to light? But then we go back to asking
the question instead of giving us evidence. Amisha, the last 20 seconds for you.
This has just begun.
Well,
I'm going to tell you one thing. We're all looking for evidence. It does come to light.
Thank you, Joy. Amisha, last point to you. Thank you.
We've seen from this administration time after time a disillusionment with how democracy works. And I think that this is just more of the same from Donald Trump, who has fully accepted the downstate wins from Republicans, but has not accepted the loss on the exact same ballot of him at the top of the ticket.
We're out of time, but the next time I owe at least 45 seconds to Ned Ryan. Sorry about that, Ned.
That's right.
But it was a good conversation.
Thanks, Rick.
Lots of opinions expressed.
Thank you, Rick.
All right, guys, and my thanks to all of you. We're out of time, so thanks for being with us. I'm Rick Sanchez.
Hi, Linda. Looks like you've got a prescription to fill. Any idea how much that's going to cost in there? The exact same drug that's $10 at this pharmacy is $150 at this one. GoodRx finds prices and discount coupons on every prescription. Just input the drug name and instantly find savings at virtually every pharmacy in America.
Next. What can I do for you? Here's my prescription, and I have a coupon from GoodRx. Nice price.
Stop paying too much for your prescriptions with GoodRx.
questions birth new questions, numberless as stars, and endless as the sea, and bring you all insight, distance, depth, and more. Lift your eyes to all that remains in question.
Hey guys, I made a professional-ish PowerPoint to show you how RT America fits into the greater media landscape. RT is not alt-left or alt-right, but we are a solid alternative to the bullshit. We don't skew liberal or conservative, and as you can see from this bar graph, we don't skew the facts either. Talking head lefties, talking head righties. Oh, there you go, above it all. So look out, world. RT America is in the spotlight now. And frankly, I have no idea how to classify us. It actually took me way more time than I care to admit.
Campaigning, coronavirus, and White House credibility. We'll take a look at all of that on this edition of Politicking. Welcome to Politicking. I'm Larry King. This weekend's handling of the president's case of COVID-19 has lessened the White House's credibility even more on how it levels with the American people and the media. And how does the president's diagnosis impact the presidential campaign for moving forward? Let's start there with Chris Shays, former Connecticut congressman. He served as senior member of the Finance and Homeland Security Committees. He has endorsed Joe Biden, and he is in Maryland. All right, well, Chris, good seeing you. Thoughts on how's the administration handled all this Trump's illness story? What do you make of it?
You couldn't do it worse, I don't think. I mean,